Hey, Bomb Squad, if you're a comedian or a podcaster looking for an affordable website solution with a modern look, then we recommend Pucks Hub. With a Pucks Hub website, you can set up your new website in minutes with easy-to-use pre-built templates. Pucks Hub websites are customizable and can easily be integrated with other platforms like Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. The best part? Pucks Hub plans are only $5 per month. We use Pucks Hub for our website at the Art of Bombing podcast, and we think you should too. That's why we've partnered with Pucks Hub to offer listeners a free 60-day trial. Head over to puckshub.com to subscribe and use promo code AOBPOD at checkout for your 60-day free trial, and then pay only $5 per month after that. Take your career to the next level with your own Pucks Hub website today.
Dan Bublitz Comedy Productions.
It's pronounced Lah-Jahlla with Jade Rose. That's what's coming up on the Art of Bombing episode 280.
My friend Dan, he's got a podcast, 'cause all comics need a podcast, and nobody had a podcast called The Art of Bombing. So Dan went out and bought a tape deck. Who knows why he bought a tape deck? Now podcasts don't get played on tape decks, but Dan is from the 80s. So hey there, all you funny jerks, come talk to Dan about your work. Tell him all about your worst times. It's The Art of Bombing.
Welcome to an all-new episode of the Art of Bombing podcast. It is me, your host, Dan Bublitz Jr., and with me, as always, is my co-host, co-producer, and cohort, Josh Shirley. And boy, let me tell you, Josh is showing out. He's trying to make me mess up on this intro.
And it didn't work.
It did not.
Man, this is second episode in a row.
I am not distracted by your muscle showing moves you got going on over there,
which wasn't showing much, but yeah, I was trying to distract Dan, and that's going to be the new thing that I try to do, because he's on a streak. You guys, he's done 2 weeks in a row on the first take, right out of the gun, and that is sensational.
We'll have to start one of those. How many days without, and it'll be how many weeks has Dan not screwed up the intro?
Yeah, right. Days without accident. Yeah, so we're
one of the days without accident, only it's week without screwing up intro.
There you go. So we got 2 marks on the board so far.
We're doing it. We're doing there. We're getting there. We're gonna get that award of some sort.
That's right.
It's great. Well, we're back. We got a brand new episode. Jade Rose was on the podcast this week. Fantastic newer comedian. This was the first time. This conversation actually was the first time we met in person. We've been connected online and just hadn't run into each other yet in the Colorado scene. And this was the first time we met. And when you listen to the conversation, you wouldn't know that.
Right.
No,
yeah, you guys. I thought I had a great chemistry on the show. I thought she brought up unearthed some good things around, audiences appreciating honesty, comics getting territorial sometimes, how volume on a show matters, and what to do when you when you lose your train of thought.
I see what you did there. You know what's funny about that is now when people listen to the callbacks episode,
they're gonna think you stole it from me.
They are.
Yes,
you totally threw me under the bus, Josh.
That's right. Life under the bus, Dan.
And you're fired. You're fired.
I'm fired.
I'm firing you for throwing me under the bus.
Oh, come on.
I thought we were partners.
Man, this is the only job I have that doesn't pay. Like, you can't just take it away.
Oh, dangling the little carrot in front of you.
Yeah, right. Look,
it's just an empty string.
Firing people is a lot more expensive than letting them quit, Dan. And
it really is.
You have to give me a severance package.
Oh, damn. All right. Well, I guess you talked me out of it. I won't fire you this week, but damn, that was harsh. Threw me under the bus.
On for another week.
You're on for another week. But I don't know. After that, I'm going to be watching you. You tried to distract me, so I messed up the intro. Now you stole my bit, but the people listening won't know. It's just so rude. So rude, Josh. Oh, man. Well, I guess since you're not fired, maybe we should, we'll keep this intro short. You're technically, when this episode comes out, you're probably on vacation. So
I'm going to be in Puerto Rico when you guys are listening to this. That's right.
That'll be fun.
Yeah, it is going to be fun. It's you know what? It's our first vacation that we will be taking without our kid.
Oh, wow. That's huge.
Yeah, he's staying at my dad's house, and we are going full Puerto Rico.
So Josh may not come back.
Yeah. So if
you may not come back to work.
I may actually be fired, guys. I may fire myself, depending on Puerto Rico.
Depending on how many drinks are had in Puerto Rico. Well, that sounds fun. I better let you get back to your vacation. And let's get into this episode with Jade. So here's our conversation with Jade Rose. Enjoy.
It's the art of bombing.
That was bad. Okay.
That's just to sync up all the audio and the cameras, even though I don't use the cameras.
I mean, maybe one day.
Well, that's the goal, is to use them one day. Yeah. I need to get an intern is what I need, though, for that to happen.
I think of that Bo Burnham song, Intern, where it's just like, I'm an unpaid intern.
And that is exactly what I need, is Bo Burnham to be my unpaid intern, because then...
He gets it. He gets it.
Exactly. Very talented. He'll know what to do with all the content that I have.
He'll tell you everything you're doing wrong.
And that's what I might need. That might be what I'm missing in all of this, is somebody to tell me what I'm doing wrong.
Like, hey.
Keep me on track.
As the kids say.
Oh, yeah, that's about right. Have you done any shows this week at all, or here recently?
I haven't done any shows this week. I have quite a few shows coming up next week.
Nice.
Actually, I'm doing the Gateway show.
Oh, that's
Billy
fun.
Anderson show. Yeah, that'll be a lot of fun. So that's in Colorado Springs and the Comedy Fort up in Fort Collins. They got a show in Longmont at Outworld Brewing on Friday.
Nice.
And then a show at Highbrow out in Greeley. It's Pride season.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I was like, Highbrow. Oh, yeah. I've heard of the
Rudy
show.
Garcia's show. Yeah.
It took me a second for it to click, but I remembered. Because I haven't really been out that way much as far as comedy goes. But trying to keep up on some of the shows. But I keep pretty busy with our own shows here in Loveland. So
yeah, I'm excited for all the stuff you've got going on in Loveland. I'm very excited for the Loveland Comedy Festival. Like, that's going to be...
It's going to be a good time.
It's going to be a good time.
The community's been very supportive of it, which is great. So, I mean, and that's huge. We've got a lot of businesses that are coming on board to be sponsors. And
awesome.
Wanting to be involved. And we had to turn venues away. And
that's really cool. Yeah. Especially for a town like Loveland that you think is just kind of, close knit. Mm-hmm. The fact that they're so open and they're being so receptive. That's awesome. I'm excited.
Yeah. So it makes it even more exciting for us too to organize it when you're not like fighting everybody. It's
they're asking you.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, almost did it again.
I'm just gonna put this in my lap. I'm not. Can you imagine the equipment? I would leave.
I wasn't. I didn't care about the chair. But the equipment, I'd be like,
yeah, no. That's when I cash app you real quick. I'm just gonna keep my drink in my lap. Like a professional.
Yeah, before we started recording, not to throw you under the bus, but you spilled the drink in the kitchen.
I spilled it in the kitchen, on the floor, on your chair. I think I got it on one of your dogs.
But it happens. Accidents happen.
Oh,
especially when you have flailing hands.
I talk with my hands, yes. And so I just got super excited about the falling housing market, I guess.
My fiance has flailing hands and she knocks drinks over all the time. So
he's like, I'm passionate.
That's why I was like, I'm surprised nobody's already spilt on this stool.
You still got one stool left, though. So
exactly,
one stool left untouched.
I'll just have to switch them around.
Exactly, switch them out. Maybe your fiance can get the next one, so I won't feel as bad.
Exactly, just like sneak it over there.
Yeah,
okay, that's your chair now.
That's your chair now.
Why is this all sticky? It doesn't matter.
It gives it character, sweetie.
It was funny though. One time we were at a bar. And she got her drink, and luckily the bartender was a friend of ours, but she got her drink. She was talking, knocked it over. And so they cleaned it up, and they got her a new drink, and then she was talking again and knocked the second one over almost immediately. He brought the third one over, and he's like, if you do it again, I'm kicking you out.
I'm done. You're done. Sweetie, you're done. You're cut off.
We can't have any of this.
We can't have this. You just flailed $40 worth of tequila right there.
And now I have to charge you for it. It was going to be on the house, but since you're just throwing it to the ground, now you have to.
Now
pay
it's on your mortgage.
Exactly. You're going to have to take a second mortgage. You have no idea how expensive this tequila is.
You're just flailing around over here.
It's crazy, though. Like, I've been to bars where they have, like, super expensive, it'll be like a tequila bar, and they'll have, like, tequilas where it's, like, $100 for one shot.
Oh, my God.
Like, hundreds of dollars for a bottle. I'm like, jeez.
That's how I felt when I first tried, mezcal? Like, the different cooking of tequila. It's like a different leaf.
Okay, yep.
And so they roast it differently, and it's a different kind of leaf. And, for a basic shot, you're looking at $15.
Wow.
For a shot
even for a basic shot.
Basic, like bottom of the barrel, like that's your house mezcal. And I'm a comedian, so like that $15 for a shot's a little pricey.
Even if you're not a comedian, I feel like $15 for a shot is pricey.
But it's so good.
But then I'm a cheap drinker.
I'm a cheap date.
Outside of, I guess I like my craft beer. That's where I'll be like, oh, I'll spend $10 on a beer, sure.
There you go. Yeah, that's how I am when it comes to rosé. I love rosé, and I'll splurge on a bottle or a glass of rosé that I'm like, oh, that looks nice.
Yeah,
that looks so fancy. I could drink my pinky up tonight.
I'm having a fancy night tonight.
It's Tuesday. Let's go.
I'm gonna get crazy and put them both up.
It's like when you're like throwing the horns, but just the pinkies.
Just the pinkies.
Mega horn.
That's how I get down.
Gang, bitch.
Oh man, that's amazing. I love it. Well, let's get into this. You're here because you know, obviously this is the art of bombing, and that's what we're here to talk about. So, yes, bombing. Well, before we get into your story, how long have you been doing comedy?
So officially, I started doing comedy in April of 2021. So
okay,
about a little over 2 years now.
So you started pretty much during the pandemic.
Yeah,
wow.
Like right after. I actually moved. So I'm from Georgia, and I moved to Colorado in August of 2020, like peak pandemic. And, lived through it. I was by myself for a lot of it. And then April of 2021, the Comedy Fort in Fort Collins opened back up after COVID, and they started doing the joke gym again, where comedians, you could essentially get a tape and time and work your jokes. Yep. And I just moved to the area, had no idea what joke gym was or what the Comedy Fort was, and just kind of took that leap to do it. And just went, yeah.
So did you start comedy in Atlanta though, or
no?
Okay, so you did start it here.
I started it here. Yeah, I did one open mic in Atlanta when I was in college. My mom was a host. She was an open mic host while I was in college. Yes, Bedhead was her name back then. And then I did one show or one open mic in Nashville in January of 2020, and then the universe shut down.
Yeah.
So yeah,
it doesn't count.
It doesn't count. Yeah. So I moved out here. I was here for I guess like 6 months and hopped on the Comedy Fort, and yeah, it's been kosher since then.
Nice. Yeah. What brought you to Colorado?
No, yeah,
was there something specific?
No, it was one of those like COVID happened, and I was in Georgia. We were dealing with the race riots and people completely, essentially ignoring that COVID existed, and I was scared. And so I had gotten accepted to grad school up at CSU, like online or whatever. And so I just decided to pack up my car and my cat one day and just
come out.
Just come out. Yeah. I didn't have anywhere to stay. I stayed in Sterling, Colorado for like 2 weeks, which is like a railroad town, I guess is what you would call it.
Yeah. It's like on the way back to where I'm from. So
yeah. So you passed through that.
Yep,
I stayed there for 2 weeks and then stayed in my car for a couple weeks and then ended up in Fort Collins. So,
Wow.
yeah.
So basically, when you were in Sterling, did you stay somewhere there or?
Yeah, I found like it was essentially a studio Airbnb.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I could have. It was like $500 for 2 weeks.
Oh wow,
and I was like, yeah, exactly. So I had my 2 weeks, and I didn't know what I was going to be doing after that. So I was like, okay, we'll figure it out, and kind of got into it. I started school, and yeah. Then I ended
the rest
up
was history.
The rest is history.
History, as they say.
History.
Oh, well, that's awesome. So I assume, are you still in grad school, or did you already graduate? Or
No, I actually didn't finish grad school.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because I actually was going to grad school when I left Georgia. The goal, the dream, which it still is, was to produce comedy festivals. And I wanted to do comedy like 420 festivals and like that kind of thing. And so I was going to school for that.
Oh.
And then...
There's a school for comedy festival
Exactly.
producing?
There's a school like here's how you can make money making people laugh. Ha 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 ha.
Really? Well,
I don't know how to do that. And it's not drink ticket included.
Well, then they don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah, but once I started doing comedy, I took a semester off because I realized how manic I was. Mm-hmm. And once I started doing comedy in April, I was like, I can make these the connections that I need to make and the stuff that I can learn in college, I can learn on the scene. Like if I just make myself present and communicate and talk to the people who are running like High Plains, like Jesse who runs High Plains, like making those connections that would probably do me better than trying to write a research paper, you know? Mm-hmm. And it just didn't feel lucrative anymore. So I did it. I did a semester of grad school. Yay me. You know, but it was definitely a learning experience. I learned a lot about myself, and I think, if anything, it got me to Colorado. Mm-hmm. Like, knowing that I had, okay, well, I'm in grad school at CSU. It gave me a landing place.
Something to get you to come out.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, which makes sense. Now, so did you go to what did you go to college for then? If event planning or
no, my undergrad is in music education.
Oh wow! Okay.
So yeah, I was a middle and high school band director for 3.5 years before I left Georgia.
Oh wow!
Yeah, marching band, jazz band, concert band, clarinet choir, all the things.
All the things.
All the district.
How many instruments can you play?
So the ones that I feel like I can play well: flute, clarinet is my main instrument. Saxophone, trumpet, percussion, a little bit of French horn. Those are the ones I feel like I can play well. And then like low brass, I'm good to like an 8th grade level. Like I can get the baby started.
Compared to some people, that's amazing.
I can do the whole
it just depends on where the bar is. Where that standard is.
Exactly.
You know? To me, if you can play any instrument at an 8th grade level, I'm going to be like, wow, you're really good. Because I can't play anything.
That means I can hold it. I can keep a pitch.
Be like, wow, you are good at this.
Yeah. That's just like me over in the corner. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's get back to that. Let's get back to your story now that I interrupted you to find out a little bit about you.
Oh, you're good.
I want to hear about your bombing.
The bombing story. You know, so I thought about this for a long time, like what story I was going to tell, because so I've only been doing comedy for a year and a half or so. Mm-hmm. And the first year of my comedy journey was a bullet train of experiences, just a bullet train. And I would definitely have to say, so I started doing comedy at the Comedy Fort in April of 21, and in May of 21, I signed up for the World Series of Comedy.
Yep.
Which is, you know, the competition. It's nationwide. They have the big finale in Vegas every year.
Yep.
And I had no idea what I was getting myself into. My little baby comedian brain was like, stage time. I'm paying for stage time. Okay. And I was looking forward to getting feedback and all that stuff. And so I show up. This was at Looney's down in Colorado Springs. Yeah. And I show up. I'm excited. You know, I'm meeting everybody, who's it, John and Dan that are with the World Series of Comedy?
No, it's Joe. Joe and I can't. Well, maybe it was a different. I don't know how long. Well, no, they were there. Joe and then Oh, I know his one friend, Jason.
Jason, yes, yes,
like,
yes.
I don't know why I was like...
Me, yes. And I literally have like their notes typed up in my bedroom, like on my wall, like it's still there. Bless my heart. So I went in and I was surrounded by a lot of really good comedians. I met a lot of really cool people, and I'd only been doing comedy at that point because the show was in June or July, so like 2 or 3 months max.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I show up and I start introducing myself, and people are, ask, how long have you been doing comedy? And everyone, it's like 5 years, 10 years, 6 years, 8 years. Like, how long have you been doing comedy, Jade? And I'm like, 2 months.
Very intimidating.
Very intimidating. And it was like I could feel my heart in my throat the entire time I was at Looney's. I was so excited just to be around the talent, but still like, what the hell did I sign up for? Mm-hmm. And so I get on stage and I have this joke that I do about reparations and like fucking white dudes, and they give out orgasms like reparations. It's fantastic. It does very well in most places. But I did this joke, and I had, I think, 3 minutes, 4 minutes for the contest. And I did this joke down in the Springs, and it was silent. It was like dead silent when I hit the punchline. And there was one, I'll never forget, there was one guy, he could have been like somebody's biker uncle that was like stage right in the audience. And he was like covered in tats, he had the leather on, but he was holding a fruity drink, like a super fruity drink. Like it had an umbrella and everything. And he just goes...
And he had a little dog in his purse.
Essentially, yeah. The dog was his woman, but yes, yeah. And so it's dead silent, and he just goes... just to like give me something, I feel like, and I was just like, thank you.
I needed that.
I needed to be seen there in that moment. And I come off stage. The audience did not like it. Like that was probably the biggest audience. They didn't laugh other than the sympathy. Yeah, the sympathy noise. I wouldn't even call it a laugh. Like the sympathy noise. And I got off stage and I felt like completely not destroyed. I was just like, oh wow, that was bad. I realized very hard. And it was in that moment that I realized the quality, like what quality comedy needs to look like, because I got to see all those other people perform. Louis Chintali is a comedian based out of San Diego, and he's a clean comic. And I saw him for the first time on that show. And
who was that?
Louis Chintali.
Oh, Louis. Okay, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I never met him. He started or either moved to San Diego after I left.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I didn't start in San Diego, but my informative years of comedy were in San Diego.
Yeah, I don't think he started in San Diego. I know he was a English professor before he started like doing comedy full time. I actually saw him at the store, the Lah-Jahlla store, when I was in San Diego for my birthday. Did I say it wrong?
Sorry, you did.
Fuck me. Fuck.
I was like, wait.
Lah-Jahlla?
Lah-Jahlla?
What?
It's
like Coachella, but for like comedy, right? Like, haha, Jokechella.
I wasn't sure if you were being funny or if you actually said it wrong.
No, I'm just stupid.
It's all right.
Okay. Well, how do I say it?
I say things wrong all the time. I only know it because I live out there.
Yeah, well, and then correct me.
There. It's La Jolla.
All right.
If it makes you feel any better.
It doesn't.
Well, no, when I lived out there, I lived like to exit to a place where I lived, you had to get off of Hamashaw Boulevard, but it was spelt with a J. And so like
Jamashaw.
Yeah, that's how I would I would say it how it was spelt. And then
La
they're
Jolla.
like, no, it's it's Hamashaw Boulevard, not Jahamaha.
La Jolla.
La Jolla.
La Jolla. That was rough.
But hilarious, because I like I said, I could tell if you were doing a bit or not.
No, I wasn't doing a bit. I'm just ignorant.
La-Jahlla is I like that. I'm probably gonna start calling it that. Because that's funny.
Lah-Jahlla.
La-Jahlla.
You can tell I'm from Georgia by the way I pronounce things.
La-Jahlla.
I'm going out there to them. They're La-Jallas. Gonna tell me some jokes about them white boys.
I'm gonna go to La Jolla Hills.
La Jolla Mountain. Curry Heat. Gang gang.
to go check out the La-Jahlla cliffs.
The cliffs of La-Jahlla.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Well,
Good times.
it was good times. Yeah.
So you met him at the store.
Yeah, so I did get to meet him at the store a couple weeks ago for my birthday, which was really cool. And it was cool because he was one of the first clean comedians I ever met, which is very rare, to be able to like lock down a clean set. But I learned a lot from that World Series of Comedy experience. And the big thing I learned from that, which is funny, I learned how to write a set list.
Oh, yeah.
Because I was writing out my sets verbatim.
Oh, okay. So you're just writing out like a script.
Essentially, yeah.
Okay,
That's
like a
when
monologue.
when I write jokes, I write in a monologue. Like I'll write in the ha-has and the inflections and all that kind of stuff. But he taught me how to write an actual set list, so that was cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. Now, with that, do you think part of it, like, obviously you were new, so it's hard to like really gauge from prior experience, but you said that joke prior to that, was that joke doing well, or is it doing well now because you had that experience and you've been able to like hone it in?
It's doing well now because I
Okay.
had that experience. Yeah,
Gotcha.
that joke was brand new. That is the one joke over the 2-ish years, I guess, now. Yeah, that I've been doing comedy that has stuck. That's the one joke that I can, it's in my tool belt that I can pull anywhere at any point and I know it's going to hit. And he helped me like hone in that joke and like figure it out in the set list. It's one of my favorite jokes. I'm not going to lie.
Well, because the reason I was asking is because I was curious if you felt like that, you got into that festival not really knowing what you were getting into. So you're excited, obviously. But then when you realized what you were into, that had to be very intimidating, and I feel like that probably really affected how you perform. Not so much even being new, but more just being like, oh shit, I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah,
now,
yeah. I think a lot of it was both. I think a lot of my performances up to that point, because I hadn't been booked before. Like this, it was all open mics, and I like booked myself for the World Series.
So this was your first actual booking.
This was my first like outside.
show.
So my first time on stage was the Comedy Fort, which is a club.
Yep.
And then my next big show was Looney's with like the World Series of Comedy.
Wow.
Yeah. And I just went in, and it was very intimidating. But it also was. Nobody else was doing it. Like there was no one else on that lineup that had less than 5 years experience.
Oh yeah. That's it's amazing though, because for me anyway, I got into it my first year of comedy. I ended up not being able to go because the year that I got into it, I moved to California, and I just couldn't afford to come back because I got into it in I don't even remember where. I think it was somewhere in Iowa that year that they were doing some club in Iowa, and it just financially made no sense for me to come back. I'd gotten into it, and then I moved, and then I was like, I can't do it or whatever. Since then, I've been in it, but yeah, my first year, and I think about that, I'm like, I'm glad I didn't go, because I feel like if I would have went my first year, it would have been a very humbling experience.
And that's what it was. That's exactly what it was. Like,
Which might have been good, but also
like I was feeling I'd been doing comedy for 2-3 months, and I was the new kid on the scene, and I was the fresh face on the scene, and so like my ego was building up a little bit because I was.
And then you got into that.
And then I got into the World Series of Comedy, and they were like, "Hey, by the way, you're not really that funny."
And that would be a question too that I would have with that, is that getting into it only being, doing comedy for a few months, like did people in the scene kind of start treating you a little different as far as like, I don't know.
I didn't tell anybody.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I didn't really like. I remember posting a picture, like a selfie, that's like, "Oh, I'm at Looney's," but I didn't really like hype myself. I'm really bad about hyping myself up in my own stuff. So like nobody really, like my mom knew.
But nobody that was going to be like, oh, because that's one thing.
I mean, when you're 2 months in, like nobody knows your name. Nobody knows who you are.
I mean, that's true. But then when you get in something like that, then people are like, well, how the hell did that? You know what I mean? And so they start kind of giving, not necessarily attitude, but they get, It's I don't know.
It's territorial almost.
It is kind of,
yes,
yeah. It's territorial, and they get like, oh wow, how the hell are you getting that? You're new. That's not.
Well, that's the thing with the World Series is like you just pay to show up.
Well, yeah,
and
you have to get. I mean, they do have a selection committee like to that. Yeah, like you have to submit a video and get in and stuff like that.
I'm trying to remember what video I submitted,
but I mean, you would have had to submit something to get in, or I mean. I know sometimes clubs, but if you were that new, Loonies probably didn't know who you were, so you're not getting recommended by a club or whatever. So you had to have submitted a video of some sort.
Honestly, it was probably the video that I had from the Comedy Fort, because when they started doing the Joke Gym again, it was, you get your time and you get a tape. And so that was that's probably the tape that I submitted, which that set was also a good solid bomb.
Oh,
so
really?
Maybe, I don't know, maybe they wanted some color on the show because...
Well, don't sell yourself completely short. Come on now.
I'm not. You're right. You're right.
You got in. You should be.
I did it. It was fun. It was fun. It was fun. I remember when I got on stage of the Comedy Fort the first time, I did a pegging joke. And I was very unfamiliar with the Northern Colorado demographic. See the hands moving, doing the thing.
And way of like, you're just like, I'm going to block him out of this camera.
I'm sorry, what were you saying?
This is my podcast now. You don't exist. And that's why we have multiple angles.
And I'm over here just like, yeah, you know.
You got one hand up over here and the other one you're looking over here.
This is my podcast now, bitch.
There we go. That's what we need.
No, that was probably the video I sent, because I remember doing a pegging joke, and it was oddly the similar reaction to Loonies, because with there was a guy in the corner that went, huh, but it was a comedian this time. It was an actual comedian who was like, that was funny. However, you didn't move the mic stand when you got on stage.
That's yeah. And that's
cardinal rule.
Yeah, but that's something a lot of new comics don't realize. I mean, because there's no etiquette to that. I mean, honestly, and I'm not saying that anybody that hosts an open. So if you're listening and you host an open mic, don't be offended by this. But if you're going to be a good host and somebody comes up and if you know it's their very first time, when you're telling them about the light and everything else about what's going on, tell them they should move the mic stand.
I've
Give
seen
them that
it.
little tidbit because they're not going to know.
They don't know. They're too nervous.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Especially if it's their first time, you know? They're just like, here's the microphone. I'm taking the microphone. And that's what I did. The mic stand stayed in the center of the stage my entire set.
Yep.
And I just worked around the mic.
Worked around it, yep. Yeah, because if you've never done comedy before, you're just going to assume... You know, like the mic stand's supposed to stay in one spot.
Stay, right. So it's just going to dissolve.
It's mounted to to the floor.
Exactly.
You can take it out. You can take the mic out, but you can't move the stand.
Don't touch the mic stand.
It's mounted.
That's how it feels.
But yeah, so if you host an open mic, that's my advice to you. If somebody comes up and says this is their very first time, tell them to move the mic stand when you're telling them about everything else.
And to speak up.
Yeah, and to speak up. Two very important things.
Yes, I had to learn to use my teacher voice even with a microphone. Mm-hmm. Like, you go into these crowds or the breweries and it's loud. They're paying attention, but it's a fun environment, so it's loud. You gotta project. Yep. You gotta use that teacher voice.
You do, and you gotta know. I mean, but that's something that also comes with experience. I mean, you're not gonna know that either, but. Having mic technique. I mean, a lot of people don't realize that with comedy there is mic technique. Like I see it, tell people all the time. Especially if they're loud. It's like if you're gonna yell into the microphone, move it away, or you're gonna blow people's ears out. And if you talk soft, you need to hold that microphone closer because you see some people go up and they'll just hold it like on their stomach essentially, and nobody can hear them. And then they're like, "Well, I don't know why."
Why didn't my jokes hit?
Why did I bomb? And I'm like, well, because nobody could hear you.
Like your jokes are funny, but nobody could hear you. Yeah. That's one thing that I've been learning a lot too. Just like mic etiquette, inflection, like when to talk louder, when to pull the mic away. Like that's an art in itself.
It really is.
As you're learning to like be more to create a performance essentially.
And that's something I learned because I am loud. Even like I could probably go do a lot of shows without a microphone.
Yeah. Right.
So I'm the comedian that holds the mic a little further away because I know I'm loud.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm the one that holds it like I'm like gripping the microphone like this, like, all right, guys, well, let's talk.
But as long as you know that you need to speak into it and project, that's
exactly.
Because you can definitely, not having technique can definitely ruin a set. Because like you said, if people can't hear you or you blow out their ears, there's just a number of things that can happen with that. And because we don't have like comedy school per se, yes, there's comedy classes and stuff, and some classes probably teach that stuff, but I feel like a lot of them are just like joke writing classes and stuff.
Yeah.
But, having that little tidbit of information, if somebody's coming,
Yeah. Well, and you have to know
helps.
that about yourself too. Like you have to take that introspective moment to be like, am I loud? Am I soft spoken? Like, because I thought I was a lot more loud spoken than I actually am until I had a microphone, because I was used to teaching middle schoolers where you have to project and you have to talk over the 12-year-olds. And so I'm like, oh, I'm loud. But on stage with a microphone with people staring at you, and it's a different, it's a different setting. It's absolutely different. And so you have to like learn that for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I saw somebody at an open mic here recently that kind of happened where they talked really soft, and the combination of talking soft and holding the mic too far away. And I after their set, because I could just kind of. I got the sense that they didn't feel like they did very well, and I was listening and I could hear their jokes and stuff was fine. I went up afterwards and I was just like, hey, you either got to talk louder or hold the mic closer, because your biggest problem is nobody can hear you because there's no mic technique.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah. It's like you're probably funny, but nobody understands you.
Yep. They got to be able to hear you and understand you. That's what I like for me sometimes. Or, well, not as much now, but when I was a newer comic, if I got nervous, I would like talk really fast and then start stumbling over words, become a mumbler.
Oh my God, yes. Yes, I've done that. And it's hard too because I have ADHD, so my brain will go in like 4 different places at once, and so I start talking over myself.
It definitely happens. You got to make sure people can hear your jokes, or you're gonna bomb for sure.
Yeah.
What do you do to analyze your sets, or how do you analyze your sets especially after a bomb, to kind of look at it and see what happened and how you can prevent it from happening in the future?
Yeah, I take my bombs kind of personally, and a lot of the times for me, I've been fortunate enough not to have like a full, other than the beginning, like a full set bomb, but it's like jokes will just not like you can either feel the tension or like it's just awkward after a joke. And so I've tried to rewrite jokes kind of based on temperature of the room, like the jokes that work in Denver might not work in Colorado Springs. And so like it's still funny. And so you kind of have to I feel like I need to like write almost for my audience at that point. Like I know the joke is funny, but how can I present it in a way that the audience will accept they'll accept it. Like I don't want to change the joke, but write it in a way that it'll be accepted and that they can feel relaxed. Because a lot of my jokes are about homosexuality and race and living with white parents and queer parents. And so it can be touchy for some communities. And so,
I'm sure. Yeah. I mean, they're all kind of can be considered hot topics, or like not hot topics, but, trigger topics.
Yeah,
that's
absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so, I definitely try and reflect on, okay, how did I tell this joke? How can I tell it better? How can I tell it differently? And that's the creative process for me, is like, okay, I've got a joke, like my reparations joke. It works and I know it works, but how can I word it for my audience so that they can accept it and they'll enjoy it? Not even accept it, but also enjoy it. Like understand what I'm saying, but also be like, oh yeah, that I can laugh at that. It's comfortable enough for me to laugh at.
Yeah. Oh, and that in itself can be a trick, with especially when you're doing, subjects like that, trying to get it. Because like I talk about religion. I've started talking more about religion because of my religious upbringing. And I noticed, I'll get to a point where I'm doing the stuff and I'm like, oh yeah, they're totally pulling back on.
See the butthole tightening, you can just feel it, the air being sucked out of it. Yes, absolutely.
Yep. And then I'll address it because I'm like, I'm still doing this.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's like, oh, by the way, we're still gay, so we're still going there. Stay with me, guys.
Yeah. We'll get there.
Mm-hmm. We're going together. You're on the ship.
Yeah, I am the captain, and you are the crew.
I am your captain now.
Listen to what I say.
Listen to me. I'm fighting.
I promise. I'll make you laugh at least.
Don't
once.
ask your mother-in-law. I swear I'm funny.
That's always funny when you see somebody in an audience do that, where like they look at whoever they're with. They don't actually physically ask, but you can tell that's what they're doing.
Did you think that's funny?
They're getting permission.
Yes.
They're looking for permission.
It's like, can I laugh at that? That was funny. I was like, yeah, you can laugh about the joke me cutting off your dick. Yeah, that's fine. Laugh at it.
You can laugh all you want. You don't need anybody else's permission. In fact, just do all the laughing.
Just laugh. That's what we want.
Yes, we want all the laughter.
It fuels us.
It does. That it does. Now, when you talked about, since the beginning, you haven't really had a host set like bomb, but you've had jokes here and there. When you tell a joke that doesn't land or you start to feel like you are bombing, in that moment, what goes through your mind? And what are things that you try to do to deviate and try to win the crowd back?
So the first thing that goes through my mind is fuck. Like genuinely just like on a loop. Because I can... an artist can tell when they're losing their audience.
Oh, yeah,
like you can absolutely tell when they're going to be gone. And I've noticed recently, and this is the ADHD me talking, I lose them when I lose my train of thought. And so a lot of it is me trying to get back to me. And so once I get back to me and I can present that to them, it's like, oh, okay. And I've said that before on stage and be like, okay, the ADHD is kicking in. Apples, bananas,
Yeah.
Whatever to keep them present and laughing, because one thing I've learned is that silence kills. Like, it's not lack of laughter; it's just silence.
Yep.
So they can be giggling or like even the grunting, in the corner. I'll take it. And so when I start to feel that silence, I try and I address it. I'm like, okay, well, we are.
Break the silence.
Yeah, break it. Yeah, I just break it. And I try and own it. Especially being a newer comic. Like, I don't have a problem being like, okay, that wasn't for you. Moving on. Like, this joke wasn't for this audience. We're going to just push forward. And a lot of the times, I've noticed that audiences will appreciate that. They'll be like, okay, you picked up that we don't like that, so we're going to move on. And they'll laugh. And then I got them back on my page. And that's helped. That's helped a lot.
Yeah. I think audiences, and while I wouldn't say we should do that all the time or whatever, and some comics will say don't ever do it, but it's like, I feel like audiences appreciate our honesty because they're, we're there in the room. And when you ignore it, like if you tell a joke or a series of jokes and they're bombing and the audience wants nothing to do with those jokes and you just keep plowing
telling the same jokes
without even if you change the direction you go, but even if it makes the whole room like awkward, like there's an awkward energy in the room because they're there, they're like, do you not see what's happening? Like, we see this.
Yeah, we see. Do you feel this? Do you not feel this?
Do you not feel what's going on? Do you not?
Yeah.
Are you not good at this? And so when you do address it, they're like, oh, okay, thank God. They do understand. They're like, oh, yeah, they're owning it.
It's not working
whatever
here.
It is
it's not working here.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of, especially seasoned comics, they have, like, when they know they're bombing, they'll have, their tool belt, their material that they can pull to like bring an audience back in no matter what. Like, I wanted to go down this route, but you're not there, so we're going to go down this route instead. And so I think as a newer comic, when you don't have as much in your tool belt, like taking a moment to recognize the audience and be like, okay, we're not on the same page here. We're just going to poop on. Okay, how do you feel about gun shootings? I don't know. I think it makes it it shows them you're a person and a performer, and not just trying to like, I mean, we're performing. That's what we're there to do. But it shows them also that you're a person, and that it might not be the best set. And that also creates, I feel like that adds a level of connection.
Yes.
Too. I mean, because I with all, the best comedy is relatable, and what makes it relatable is you're able to connect with an audience because of that material, whether, whatever it is. And that same thing with that, when you're self-aware and the audience is there with you or whatever, and you address it, you're forming a connection.
Yes, a relationship
over that.
Yes,
exactly. Yep.
Absolutely. I mean, I've had people. I actually had a show a couple of weeks ago out in Boulder. Anthony Bartolo's show, Funkel and Garf's, I think.
Yep. It's a fun show.
It's a fun show. It was so fun. It's a cute little brewery. Yep. Like, the house was packed, and there was a woman that had seen me prior, like months prior, like at least 6 months ago. And I did a joke about The Little Mermaid that didn't hit as hard as I wanted it to. And I did the same thing. I was just like, okay, well, this is a wide audience, so we're just going to move on. And they laughed, and they loved it. Like, it broke the awkward tension of me not doing well. Mm-hmm. And she came up to me afterwards, the lady that was in the audience, I'd seen me before, and she said, "You didn't do that last time. Like, you didn't acknowledge the awkward the last time I saw you." And I was like, "When was the last time you saw me?" And she was like, "Yeah, it was like 6 months ago." And I was like, that is cool. It's cool to to have an audience member recognize that growth and be like, "I've seen you before. You're doing better." Mm-hmm.
You're getting better.
You're getting better.
No, that's like one of the greatest forms of validation as a comic, is that knowing, having somebody see you at different stages of your career, and actually be able to see that you are getting better,
and you're trying.
Hey, oh yeah, you're a lot better than when I saw you before. You're actually getting good at this.
Exactly.
Kind of
yeah. And it took me a while, especially after like that first 8 months to a year of doing comedy. All I cared about was the validation of the comics. Mm-hmm. And
that's a big, but I mean, when you're new, you don't know, but that's one of those things.
Yeah.
Where it's like, that's kind of a big.
Oh, I got sucked in.
Yep. Yeah. And it's easy to get sucked into, where it's like, oh, I just want to make them laugh. And then and what ends up happening is you end up doing jokes that are for the back of the room, which
and not
is
for
fun.
you, or the audience. Exactly.
Yeah.
You're not writing for you. You're not writing for an audience. You're writing to get the back of the house to laugh.
Mm-hmm. And the back of the house doesn't pay for tickets.
Yeah, exactly. They're not writing my checks. They're not booking me. Well, no, they are booking me.
Some of them are booking me. Still, it's audiences who buy the tickets. And if you're not making them laugh, you're not going to get booked in shows.
You're not going to get booked again. And that's the performance aspect of it. It's like, you want to be accepted by your peers, and like, you want that validation, but they're not always going to validate you the way an audience will.
No.
And
me personally, I would rather be validated by the audience.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, if other comics don't think I'm funny, like, whatever. You think whatever you want about me.
Exactly.
But if I go into a room and I make an audience laugh, and after the show they come up and tell me they had a great time and everything else,
I did my job and I feel great.
Yep.
I'm going to go to sleep with a smile on my face that night. That's exactly how I feel. And once I stopped placating to the back of the house, it changed how I performed 100%.
Yeah, I'm sure. No, I'm curious, going back to your story about being in the World Series of comedy, you said that you had them give you the notes and stuff. What were some of the notes? Because you said you still have it hung up.
I do. So a lot of the notes were about timing and transition. Mm-hmm. I will say, of the notes, probably 30% of what they said I took away. Because a lot of it was, they talked a lot about my race jokes and why they didn't hit and how they didn't hit. And it was difficult for me to take that feedback from straight white dudes. Mm-hmm. Cause they're
fair.
Like the feedback from my presentation, my delivery, all of that was fantastic. And that's the kind of stuff that's gotten me better. But like some of the stuff on the actual jokes themselves, I was like, okay. And it was in that moment, like, because they take you out after. Like, we all met up at a bar after, and they were giving out our stats around a round table. We heard everybody's stats.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yes, we heard everybody's stats. It was like, do you want to hear? So it was a round table discussion. And I learned, in that moment what kind of jokes I wanted to tell, which was I'm going to keep telling race jokes because I know that's what, not race, that's a topic that I do well in. But it's important to listen to everybody's feedback.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Whether you take it or not.
Yes.
Yeah. It's still, yeah.
And they gave me really good feedback. And even I talked to them probably for another 3 or 4 months afterwards, just emailing back and forth, what do you think about this? Just to get their input because they're industry leaders. And, I want to know what they're looking for too. But I also know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
And
that's definitely important as a comic. You need to kind of follow your own path and tell the jokes that are that resonate with you and that you're going to be passionate about telling.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what other people. I mean, as long as the audience is enjoying your jokes and having a good time,
and you're being respectful. I don't know. I've always felt it doesn't have to be a huge level of respect in your jokes, but a twinge. I talk a lot of shit about white people in my jokes, but there's always a level of respect, So
yeah, well, and I think that's a good point. You definitely do have to have a level of respect. Me personally, I don't. I'm not a big fan of people who are hateful. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
When I say you got to tell the jokes that are you. Well, if you're a hateful, racist,
if you're a Nazi,
piece
don't
of crap,
get on stage.
then
Yeah, I don't want to hear
have
that.
time for you.
Exactly. No, you got to tell. Yeah, you got to tell your truth. That's good comedy is presenting your truth and making your truth funny, and unless you're eating children or something.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Something horrible.
Yeah.
We don't need to hear about that. Definitely don't need to hear about that. What is, you said after you had that experience that kind of taught you that you should start writing a set list for sets instead of, writing your whole script per se. But so what's your joke writing process like? And what's an evolution of a joke for you from, I have this idea for a joke, I'm going to test it out. Now it's going in my final act.
Yeah. So usually I've got my little notes on my phone, and so it's bullet points, blurbs, bullet point blurbs, and then I'll take that joke and essentially meditate on it, or not that joke, but that bullet point, and meditate on it. And so I'll think about where I was when I wrote that down, what was happening, and we talked about writing down jokes verbatim. I hear it verbatim in my head. And so I'll go over the different variations of how that joke can go in my head. I'll picture myself on stage telling this joke in my head. And then I start writing verbatim. And I will write it out 10, 15 times verbatim. From the start of the joke to the end of the joke. And sometimes it's, a 5-page joke just because you're writing it verbatim, and I'm including ellipses and all caps, and, I'm adding the emotion to the physical writing. And once I've done that probably 5 or 6 times, written it out verbatim, that's when I start bullet pointing it. Mm-hmm. That's when I can remember, okay, this is your intro, this is your punch. This is your intro, this is your punch. And so I bullet point those. And it's usually the tags in between and the tag at the end that changes based on the audience is what I've learned. The intro and the punchline is what's funny, but it's the in between that you can kind of mull around for your audience. And so I'll do that, and then I'll work it at an open mic a couple times. And if I'm feeling really crazy, I'll work it on a show a couple of times. But I'll know it's a hit when there's more than a 4-second laugh for me. If it's not a quick chuckle or oh, that's funny, when it's an actual laugh, then
where you get an actual applause break.
Exactly. Yeah. I did actually did a joke on Anthony's show about, I did a school shooter joke, which doesn't sound funny, but it was really funny. And I had reworked it and reworked it and reworked it. And it was the first time I had presented it the way that I had. And I got 1.5 minute laugh break.
Wow.
Which was huge for me. And, and it's one of those cringe laugh jokes where people don't know if they can laugh yet, but they laughed enough and it made them cringe that they laughed for 1.5 minutes. And that's when I know it works. Mm-hmm. Even if it's a cringy laugh, it was still a moment that they sat in.
When it
exactly.
Lasts.
Yeah. They sat in that moment. They were like, whoo-hoo. So that's kind of my thought process.
Now, you were talking earlier too about when you're when you're talking about analyzing set state, sometimes you try to figure out a way that you could present it in front of different audiences. What are some tricks that you've learned to kind of do that? Like, are you doing it by watching other comedians on the show, or do you just
Yeah, a little bit of both. Like I try and learn about the area. For like the first time I ever did a show in Greeley, I had no idea what to expect, and so I was like, what is Greeley like? It's quiet. It's a farm town. That's what that's my audience. And so I kind of take lead from the audience and like the area more so than anything, because my leads don't change. It's just how I cradle them to the punchline. Yeah, really, that changes. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Just kind of, I was just curious though, because it's interesting, because I had somebody on not too long ago that we were talking about this. Just last week we recorded, and they were talking about that they've had to learn, doing comedy different areas to kind of not necessarily change their material, but same kind of thing where they have to kind of like, this audience is going to be this way, this audience is this way. There's some things that I'll be able to, get away with here that I can't here. So I got to kind of mold, and adapt to these audiences.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like I learned a lot of that as a teacher, because I taught music. And so there was music that the kids would want to play that I couldn't play in certain areas. And there was one job I had where we could only play religious music, and that was it. And so and I pulled my music selections based on what that community needed, and it kind of just if you want them to laugh, you kind of have to cater. Not cater your entire self, and don't change who don't change who you are. But like, I think it's part of the art. Like, I think it makes a good artist who's like,
it's reading the room is what that is.
That's what it is. That's the art.
Yeah, you're not.
And like a musician, like Beyonce doesn't have to read the room. Like, homegirl shows up and she does her thing, and everybody loves it. But comedy is one of those things where,
I bet you she had to read the room before she was famous. Though.
Oh my God! What I mean? Like, yeah, exactly. I mean, exactly.
There was a time for, even for musicians where nobody knew who they were, and if they wanted to play the kind of music, they still had to, present it in a way.
Yeah, yeah, that's true.
That would definitely happen. Coming from a music background, I suppose the transition to comedy was probably fairly easy. And do you find writing, like when you write, you're writing with like rhythm and stuff that you would get from having a music background?
Yeah, I think writing, that's funny you say writing with rhythm, because I do that a lot. And I think a lot of that comes from writing like word for word at the beginning, like writing out verbatim my set list. It's very rhythmic. It's even my handwriting changes. I think having that music background, and I was a music major, so we practiced our instruments for 8, 9, 10 hours a day.
Wow.
When I was in college. Like, that was required. And so like having that discipline of being like, all right, you got to sit down and write. Like, sometimes it's hard, the mental health gets in the way, and she's a bitch. But it taught that discipline of like, okay, you're not going to get better if you don't practice, if you don't go to open mics, if you don't write your jokes out. And my mom, being a comedy host back home, I think kind of gave me that perspective, because I watched her host comedians who weren't prepared. And I watched her frustration booking comedians who weren't prepared. And so when I started doing comedy and talking to her, she was like, you better show up prepared. Don't you dare. Like, the first time.
Don't you dare visit.
Exactly.
Don't you dare.
Don't embarrass me.
Mom.
Yes, exactly. I remember the first time I had to cancel a show, and I was sick. I don't remember what it was. I was sick. But I canceled a show, and I called my mom, and she was like, what do you mean you're sick? You canceled a show because you're sick?
Yeah, there's no canceling.
There's no canceling. And like, this is the same woman who would tell me to call off of work, because I have the sniffles. But she was like, you canceled a comedy show? Like, what? You're blacklisting yourself.
There's no canceling.
There's
shows
no canceling.
In comedy.
Everybody laughs.
Is you just go up there, that believe me, the microphone has seen more disease
than
it's
you
fine.
have. Yes. You grin and bear it, sweetie. Get on that stage.
Oh, well, this has been great. We're going to start wrapping up. What's been one of your favorite shows that you've done so far in your career?
Definitely the Gateway Show. The Gateway Show, Billy Anderson Show, has been one of my favorites. I found Billy Anderson through Dry Bar. and just randomly messaged him on Instagram because we're both from Georgia. He's from South Georgia. I'm from North Georgia. And I was like, hey, I think you're hilarious. You're awesome. And I was doing comedy maybe like 3 months. And when he started doing the Gateway show and started touring, he came out to Colorado and he asked me to do a guest spot. And it went very well. And then he came back and he asked me to do like an actual spot. And this is the kind of show, the format is you do essentially 7 minutes sober and 5 minutes not. Mm-hmm. And it was the Church of Cannabis, downtown Denver. The venue was beautiful. It was a packed house. And as a stoner, I just felt like I was around my people. It's as a queer woman of color from the South, it can be difficult for me to find a place to belong. And in that moment, in that church,
that church,
I just felt so welcome that the jokes just flowed. It was like honey off the tongue, like one of those moments where it just made sense. My sober set was good. My stoner set was good. People were shaking my hand afterwards and telling me how much they enjoyed coming out tonight. And it was the first time I really felt like, one, I can do this. Like, not necessarily for money, but I can do this.
Yeah.
And two, people need this. Like, people need
absolutely.
to laugh. People
now more than
ever. And I haven't been part of the comedy scene in Atlanta back, what was that, like 2013? And then seeing it post-COVID when I'm like actually in it, it's very clear how much people need to laugh. And so that show, I left feeling empowered, like I did a good job, that people went home, like I can see mom and dad in the cars just driving home with smiles, little stoner smiles on their faces,
Little stoner smiles.
Little stoner smiles. And that was definitely my best show. I'm very excited to get to do that show again next week.
That's fantastic. Well, the last thing is we have the Art of Bombing playlist. It's the Get Pumped. Doesn't have to get you pumped for comedy, but just a song that gets you pumped that you would add to our playlist.
Oh, yeah. Person in the Mirror is the name of the song.
All right.
And I will find the artist, but the intro of the song, this is one of my comedy hype songs. It's like, the person in the mirror looking like they want to fuck me. I do not own the rights to this song. It's like 2.5 minutes long, but it's just going to get you like, I'm feeling good. I'm hot. I'm sexy. Let's go. Yes.
We have all the things. Triple threat.
Yes. Oh, and then can I tell you one more?
Yeah.
Okay. There's another one called Shit Show by Peter something. I don't find that. But it's called Shit Show. And it talks about his life essentially becoming a shit show, but how the shit show is a show he's going to. Like he's traveling to the shit show. And this song locked in when I first started doing comedy, and I was driving from Fort Collins to Denver like 4 nights a week to do open mics. And I was just like, all right, this is the shit. We're doing it. It's a pumpy one.
All right,
sure.
I'll add them both.
Yeah.
Well, this has been fantastic. Where can people find you? What do you want to direct them to?
Yes, you can find me Instagram, Jade Rose _creative, Facebook, Jade Rose, TikTok, jaderose.c.
All right, fantastic. Thanks for doing this.
Thanks, Dan. This is fun.
This has been a Dan Bublitz comedy production.